I'd like to call this meeting of the Covington Board of Education to order. Becky, will you call the roll, please?
Here.
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 Here. Here. Will everyone join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everyone, for being here. If everyone take just a minute to silence your phones or any smart devices you have so we're not interrupted this evening, I would appreciate it. If you'll allow me just one point of personal privilege, I just wanted to say how honored I am to get to chair a meeting of the Covington Board of Education in my old elementary school. You know, I grew up 8 houses down the road here, so it's just a really honor for me and giving me all the feels tonight. So thank you for everyone who made that possible, and I appreciate my colleagues for their confidence in me as well. We have some public input tonight. Dan Curtis has signed up for public input. Just as a reminder for the public, members of the public may address the board during the period set aside by the board without submitting an item for the agenda. No action shall be taken during this portion of the meeting on issues raised by employees or the public unless deemed an emergency by the board. Please note that comments are asked to refrain from personal remarks in which an individual is named. Comments are limited to 2 minutes unless extended by the board chair. Critical comments or complaints are processed through the district's complaint procedures. Questions and concerns will be addressed by the board through various venues, including but not limited to the district website and email. Mr. Curtis, if you'll come up to the mic and the podium here, please state your name and your address for the record, and you'll have 2 minutes.
I'm Dan Curtis, 37 West Cobblestone, Florence, Kentucky. First of all, thank you all for what you do, Mr. Garrison, the board. Appreciate it very much. I'm here representing the softball team. I brought a softball player, the senior captain of mine. Her mother. We have a former player here, and we have some of the Tom Ellis Foundation. We're just concerned about the softball field, obviously. I spoke last year, and we took a vote, and we kind of thought things were done, and now I understand we're taking a vote again. Our numbers are up this year. We're looking at 17 to 20 people this year, thanks to this young lady and other ones. Also, the thanks of a promise of a new ball field. That's really got them generated. If you ever built a new house, you go out and look at that concrete foundation, and you look at this, and you look at that. Just the fact that they went and drilled some holes down there generated. And I really think that had a lot to do with it. For those of you who don't know, Glen Swings is a nice little field. It just doesn't meet KHSA standards. We've not been able to hold a district tournament there. We have no way of recouping any of our money. There's no way it's logistically you can do anything there. Our dugout is about the size of that table. You get 7 people in there. It's crowded. Literally, they have to sit on top of each other. We're looking at 20 girls next year, which is awesome. I got some future players here, hopefully, ladies. And one of the issues we had, the scoreboard works 2 innings. It's like me. It's getting old, and it gets tired, and it just quits. We have a bathroom strapped to a portalet, and that's a very, very tough situation. I understand the folks at Glen not wanting us in. They get it clean. We go in there with cleats. Makes it tough. It's $125 per game per umpire if we have a varsity JV game. On campus, we have an ability to have a concession. We have an ability to also charge a fee. Most softball charge $5 to get in. We don't have that privilege there. Softball is not only a sport, it's an education. Every girl has to pass. Discipline has to be there in school. Got a young lady sitting back here, not my player, but Miss Allison here, very successful young lady in softball, helps it. In 5 years, I've had 0 ladies I've had to discipline for sitting down and not play. I've had 2 because of grades. So it's not only a sport, it's also an education. It's a learning experience. Folks, we need that field. I know in your heart you know the field. I know it's expensive. My gas bill was $100 last year. It's $200 this year. It's $300 this year. By the way, I work for Duke. It's a myth. We don't get free service. Anyway, I'm just here to make my plea. I know when you all vote again, please, in your heart, in my heart, do it for these kids here, not for me. I'm not going to be around that long. It needs to be on the field. We got the best basketball, best football, best baseball field in the region. We need to have the best softball field in the region. Awesome. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you, honestly. And I'm going to excuse myself soon because my granddaughter plays basketball tonight. Thank you all very much. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Mr. Curtis, not only for your comment, but for your service. Long time Bulldog. Appreciate it. We're going to move on to district recognition and presentations. We have some students who we'd like to recognize tonight. And I believe Ms. Meyer is going to recognize those students. That's what it says on my agenda. You can delegate to someone else if you'd like to.
I am happy to recognize our Amazing Kindness Club. So these students work tirelessly through our Cardinal Club, our after school and before school programming to share and just encourage kindness throughout our building. So they go and sing happy birthday to every student on their birthday. They make birthday bags for the students. They have little encouragement clips. If they see a kid having a rough day, they'll just come a paper clip or not clothespin clip them that says, you know, you've got this, or we're glad you're here. So just spreading kindness. That's not just a tip of the iceberg of the things that these wonderful students do. And this is 15. We actually have how many total, Ms. Furnish? 22 total that participate in this club, but these 15 are here tonight. They have something they want to share with you as well. So if you guys want to go ahead and stand up. Are they doing the pledge first? Okay. All right, go ahead, boys and girls. And then they also have some gifts for our board members because we greatly appreciate what you do for our schools every single day. So boys and girls, if you would like to take those up. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you. Yeah.
Right over there.
Yeah.
And you will hear their medals clanging on them because we also had our KSA celebration before this. So that's their medals, but I would like to introduce each of the students. So when I say your name, please stand up. Caden, Kiasia, Michaela, Momo, Adeline, Delilah, Lydia, Charlotte, Haley, Maddie, Riley, Kylie, Ava, Eli, Micah, and Ronan. And then I would also just like to thank our parents. Thank you for letting them come tonight and let us just giving us an opportunity to share the great things they are doing here at Latonia every single day. We are so proud of them, and we know that a lot of that comes from the support that you are giving them as well. So thank you.
All right. Truly outstanding work. Thanks to each and every one of you for all the great work that you're doing. I know I got to meet most of you before the meeting and learn a little bit more about what you do every day. Please just keep that up. And I would echo Ms. Meyer. Thank you to all the parents who are here for supporting their children. We really do appreciate it. We have some more recognitions tonight. I believe Mr. Simpson is going to recognize our Certified Employee of the Month.
Miss Mara Ross is one of the most dedicated and hardworking teachers a school could ask for. She has a heart of gold and does anything and everything she can to support everyone she crosses paths with. Mrs. Ross's role shifted some this year, transitioning from working with students to now spending the majority of her time coaching staff. She is our direct instruction coach and works diligently to provide staff with training and support needed to be most effective DI teachers possible. In addition to DI, she meets weekly with our K-2 teachers to support the planning and teaching of their foundational reading program. This support is vital since 4 out of 6 of our K-2 teachers are first or second year teachers. She also mentors not one, but 2 of these same first year teachers and provides ongoing support in all areas. Additionally, she runs our Scholastic Book Fair every year and collaborates with our FRC coordinator to make literacy connections at our monthly family nights. Anything literacy, she is there to support and lead. Our students and staff are blessed to have Mrs. Ross's expertise, leadership, and support. And here are just some additional things about Ms. Ross. Mara has been extremely eager to coach DI. She is always quick to answer questions. She's worked hard the first week of school to get everyone tested and in appropriate groups. Mara has also embraced her new responsibilities with enthusiasm and vigor. She is taking ownership of DI reading program as well as OG. She is ensuring the programs are managed and taught to fidelity. She is providing teachers with the guidance and support needed to be successful. Thank you, Ms. Ross. Are you here tonight?
I don't believe
She
she's
is
here
not.
tonight.
Okay, well, we got something for her.
Great, thank you. Ms. Edlin's going to recognize our classified employee of the month.
Our classified employee of the month is Christina Patterson. She here tonight? No? Well, let's celebrate her. Christina Patterson is a huge asset to Latonia Elementary. She has served as a special education instructional assistant in the past and currently serves as an instructional assistant in our first and second grades. She goes above and beyond to support all students, particularly those who have the highest need both academically and behaviorally. She does not hesitate to jump in and help wherever needed. She is a strong advocate for both our students and their families and is always challenging us to think about ways we can improve our overall school climate and culture. She does not hesitate to share ideas and take the lead. After attending a recent district professional development on providing small group reading intervention, she came back ready and eager to start giving students extra support and immediately started organizing resources for all of the instructional assistants so that they would have easy access to high quality strategies. Our school is a better place because of Mrs. Patterson's dedication.
And last but certainly not least, Mrs. Huff is going to recognize our volunteer of the month.
Is Judy Walls, and is she
Mhm.
here? Meet me at the podium. Hello. Well, doesn't that say all? Where to even begin with the amazing Judy Walls? Not only were we blessed to have Judy as an instructional assistant for many years, she has continued to support Latonia Elementary after her retirement. Judy has a big heart, and we can always count on her to bring extra joy and cheer to both staff and students. She has a sense of humor that is unmatched, and we love seeing her on a regular basis. Judy has volunteered at our annual trunk and treat and has run our Cardinal Buck store for the past 2 years with no small task. She volunteers on an average of 8 to 10 hours a month. She keeps all the awesome items organized and well stocked so our students can spend their hard-earned Cardinal Bucks every month, and she makes sure everything runs smoothly when they come to shop. Thank you, Judy, for being an absolute best.
Thank you to everyone. Congratulations to all who were recognized. Obviously, very well deserved. Before we move into the next part of our agenda, our informational items, I will have a break here if anyone does want to depart our meeting. This would be a great part to do it now before we get into some of our business. So we'll just break for just a minute or two if anybody wants to scoot on out. Thank you so much, everyone. The jingle.
At first, I thought it was Jingle Bells. I was like, and I realized.
see you, Dan. Yep.
All right, we're going to move on to the next part of our agenda, our informational items tonight. First up on our informational items, Ms. Meyer is here to give us our annual update on Latonia Elementary. We have a screen over here for board members. They'll show the PowerPoint that's also in your board packet.
All right. Well, I just want to start by saying thank you all for giving us the opportunity to tell you about some of the great things we are doing here at Latonia. And I am just going to jump right in. So if you go to our first slide, that is some information you requested about our kindergarten readiness. So last year in 2022, we had 32% of our students that were kindergarten ready when they came to us. This year, we saw an increase and we were at 41%. So we contribute a lot of that to the great work that is going on at James E. Biggs. We got a lot of students from them this past year and just want to give them a kudos for helping making sure our students are prepared when they get to kindergarten. We also have our third grade reading proficiency to share with you. So the way this chart reads is the first column is our 21-22 school year. So those were third graders at the end of the year on our KSA summative assessment. We had 51% proficient and distinguished, and our novice was about 19%. Then you go to the 22-23 school year. I included kind of where, because this is a different group of students, say third grade, but different students. So at the beginning of the year on our fall screening, we had about 29% saying that they were at benchmark on that screening. By KSA, we got that up to about 47%. And our novice was down to 12%. So you'll see throughout looking at our KSA results, we are getting really, really strong at reducing our novice to a low level. So now we're just getting them to that apprentice part, and now we're ready to push them a little bit further and get them to proficiency. And then this year coming in at third grade, we switched to Dibbles this year for our screener. There were some KDE changes, so we did change our screener to meet those requirements. And we were at 48% of our third graders coming in at benchmark level this year. So we are excited to see where we go with that for the rest of this year. And then it does not include all of our KSA, but overall index score on KSA did increase from 60.7 to 67.1. So even though we saw that slight dip in our third grade scores, overall we did see those gains as a school. Next is our average daily attendance. So in 2022, for the whole year, we were at about 93.64%. Then we compared the first 3 months of last year to the first 3 months of this year. The first 3 months of last year, we were at 93.9. You can see that now, our first 3 months this year, we were at 96.14. And that is not a coincidence. We have put a lot of work into that. That is because of several targeted efforts and an awesome attendance team that we have here at Latonia working with our assistant principal. Some of the things that we do is just really make sure we're communicating with families and providing supports. We had a student success night at the beginning of the year where we invited families and talked about all the different ways they could support their students' success, and attendance was part of that. And we actually had them working in groups with other parents to have these discussions. So it was a great learning night. We also do dojo principal updates every Friday. You'll see our attendance board behind you is our bus. We had an energy bus theme this year. So every week we report out on what grade level is driving the bus for great attendance. We reward classes that had the highest attendance and just continue to encourage that every morning in our morning assemblies. And then again, the attendance team, they meet weekly and look at data immediately when it comes in and then make plans based on that data. So that could be home visits, phone calls. And then when we do home visits, it's with our FRC coordinator, and we talk about how we can help if there's any barriers that are causing issues with attendance. For our percentage of new staff this year, so for certified staff last year, comparison to last year, we had 11.5% new staff last year for certified only. For this year, we had 19% new staff. For classified last year, we had 15% new staff. This year, 0. So we were able to retain our classified staff last year. And then overall both, we had 15% new staff overall last year. This year, 9% new staff when you look at the staff as the whole. Percentage of teachers with less than 5 years experience. Last year, we were at 14%. That did increase significantly this year to 27%. Uh-oh. It's not clicking, Becky. Okay. Well, I may have just clicked through a bunch then.
We also have it. We also have
Okay,
it here,
so-
so you can.
All right. I will just we'll just let that go then and keep going. All right, our school data report. So next is our family involvement from last year. So last year we were at 98%. And you can see all the different offerings and the variety of different family engagement events we had. So last year we made it to 98%. This year, currently, so your report says 95. We have had several events this week. It's been a busy week. So we had a winter sports banquet on Monday. We had our Cookies with Santa on Tuesday, where we had 292 attendees. And then we had our KSA celebration tonight. Our update as of yesterday is we are now at 97%. So again, these are targeted efforts. About midway through the year, we look at what families we have not connected with face-to-face, and we target getting them in this building and having that face-to-face connection. So that's how we're getting those high results. Some general information, points of pride. So overall, we really do pride ourselves on creating a sense of community and family within our school and providing a learning environment that focuses on developing the whole child. Our goal is to create a school that students and staff want to be part of. They care about one another, support one another, and challenge one another. We do focus on the whole child, so focusing on both the academics and social behavior sides. We believe that building strong connections with students will motivate them to be their best selves. So we balance academics and social behavior supports. We're intentional in our scheduling to ensure students have adequate time to learn content, while also prioritizing time for kids to interact with and build connections with adults and peers. We prioritize morning meetings, special areas in the arts, and non-contingent recess for our students, just like we prioritize protecting content instructional time. All of these things work together to help us meet our mission of ensuring that every student meets their full potential. Additionally, as you will hear throughout this presentation, we set high expectations for our students and ourselves. Notice on the slide, and not because we're not proud of it, because we are extremely proud of it, but we did not list our KSA results on here because that is one data point. Are we proud and thrilled to be a green school? Absolutely. And we celebrated that with our students today. However, we also know that state test scores are not what define us. It is one indicator, one score at one point in the year, and we value it and we give it the attention that it deserves, but we also focus on other areas because, like I said, those don't define us. Here at LES, we are about so much more than just that. We are about removing barriers. And Mr. Gastrite, I'm going to quote you when you talked to the Covington Rotary, when you said that we are here to provide anything for the child that the community is not already providing. That is what we believe here at Latonia as well. Do we want high academic results as well? Absolutely. But there are other things that we provide in addition to that. We are all about providing and building a love of learning with students that will go well beyond their years at Latonia. Our mission is to ensure that every child meets their full potential, and if we do that well, our students will continue to achieve at high levels no matter where they go after us, whether it's another elementary school or onto middle school, because we have taught them how to be a learner. That is our ultimate goal. Oh, it's working now, Becky. Thanks, you fixed it. Some other general information, our top 3 areas of growth focus. So one is teacher development and support. Obviously, with having about 30% of our teachers with less than 5 years experience, we have to make sure that we are continuing to give them the support and development they need. We are also continuing to focus on increasing our proficiency in reading and math and all academic areas, really, and then continuing to focus on our social emotional supports for students. And both of those are through our tiered, multi-tiered systems of support. Some other general information, how we promote ourselves in the community. So we do have monthly family nights and events. With those at the beginning of the year with Meet the Teacher Night, we always have a really good turnout at that event. So we take that opportunity to positively interact with our families. We give them a schedule of all of our events for the year at that time so they can plan, they can have a calendar, they can mark it down, and then we promote it throughout the year as it gets closer as well. We also have just clear and frequent communication through Infinite Campus, our webpage, our Facebook page, and again, Class Dojo specifically with our families. I would say about 98% of our families are connected on Dojo, and we have sent, as of this packet, about mid-November, we had sent about 9,000 messages as a school to our families and, communicating back and forth with them. We also have our school guidelines to success shirts. That is something we provide every single year for our students. And we encourage them to wear it every single Friday to build that sense of community. And then we encourage them to wear it out in the community because nobody promotes us better in the community than our people. So we really do encourage them to share that and what we're all about. And then you'll see several community connections. I'm not going to read all of those to you, but we have worked very hard with especially the help of Miss Kim Frank over here, who begs and gets anything and everything we could ever need. All of these different organizations, this has been a growing list that we have really been working on, and they support us so much. There are so many things that the community is doing for us. We have actually been talking to our grade level teachers about some service learning projects so we can start giving back to those same community partners because they are supporting us and we want to support them as well. All right, so you asked about Central Office and Board of Education support. So first, I want to thank you for giving us the opportunity to kind of tell you what additional supports might help us continue the success here at Latonia. So thank you, and I am not one to squander an opportunity. So I've got some things I've put a lot of thought into this. First is just getting input or voice from school stakeholders when reviewing or adopting board policies. The decisions you make at the board level come down to us and trickle down to us. So when you have new policies or are reviewing policies, we would love to have input in that. I don't know if there's a schedule of when policies are coming up for review, kind of like site-based. I'm not sure how that works at the board level, but just reaching out to school stakeholders and getting our input, I think would be helpful. The biggest thing that we could use support with right now is enrollment. So with the closing of City Heights, we are down to about 270 students. And with less students comes less resources and less teachers. So right now we have 2 teachers per grade. So when we talk about, when we get to teacher retention, when we talk about workload being one of the things that, is something we're always addressing, when you only have 2 students on a team or 2 teachers on a team, that workload is higher. Between 3 teachers, 4 teachers. So that's one thing that obviously enrollment affects. With that also, with only having 2 teachers on a team, we're going to talk about district planning days soon, which are amazing, by the way. But with that, when we're sending, so we have some teachers that are teaching 2 grade levels or 2 content areas. So they're out of the building twice a month when students are here to go to those plannings because we value it and we think that we should send teachers every time. But it's also a challenge, whereas most teachers are only missing 1 instructional day a month. So that time definitely adds up. So just more reason that I am open to ideas and supports on getting our enrollment back up because that is something that will really help us continue the success we've seen. Next is just attendance support with late arrivals and early dismissal. So Miss Duty has been wonderful. Her team is working really hard with the schools to address attendance. Right now, the district main focus is on unexcused absences, which is where it probably needs to be because we have to get that first. But I have had many conversations about her and just want to keep that on the radar because here at Latonia, late arrivals and early dismissals are one of the things we are trying to target right now. We've had about 657 late arrivals this year. 484 which have not been excused. So that means there wasn't a doctor's note or anything like that. And again, we are really educating our families, and we've seen an improvement in unexcused absences, but we're still struggling with those tardies and getting people here on time. And when we teach reading, that's one of the first things in the morning. We used to do it in the afternoon, but we know those kids' brains are a little bit fresher first thing. So, they're missing really, really important instructional time. So that's something we could use further support with as it comes, and I know priorities are where they are now because they need to be, but just keep that at the forefront. And then continue to encourage collegiality amongst all schools. So the district planning days that we are doing right now, you guys have protected time in our staff planning days within the calendar, which is amazing for school level planning. And then on top of that, the district this year rolled out district planning days where teachers from all over the different schools get together and plan for specific content areas. It has been amazing. And one of the things that Mr. Alter and Ms. Lindbergh really encouraged was that principals have their teachers go to those. And we are a school that it wasn't really an option. We said you have to go to these. Even if you're a veteran teacher, the knowledge you have will help other teachers. So my only thing with support on that is continuing to encourage all principals to send all teachers because we need our highest performing teachers across the district attending those and sharing what they're doing. When they're not there, they have key information that could help all of us. So please continue to encourage all teachers in the district, first year and the most veterans, especially those ones getting the highest results. We need to know what they're doing. Mr. Garrison always says we are here for all kids in Covington. They are all our students, and we've got to be able to support one another in that way. And then one thing I don't have on here that I did add, when I was watching a lot of the board meetings in the past, you guys have talked a lot about the master facilities plan. And I know you commonly or sometimes bring up things specific about Latonia. So thank you. Please keep us in mind as you're working on the master facility plan. We have real challenges here that other schools don't have with the open concept. Noise levels, obviously, which has not been as bad with, less enrollment, but, we're looking at adding a structured unit to our building, which is students with some really high sensory needs. And a building like this can cause real challenges. And we are eager to have those kids. We want to support them, but we just know that it will look a little bit different here than a typical school. We have had some real issues with HVAC with the open concept, and we've been in continual communication with the company that's working with us, and they've been wonderful working with us. But it's been about a year now where we've had some temperature issues in the building, and parts of the building are freezing while other parts of the building are really hot. And when I talked to him, he said a lot of that is the open concept. So please just keep us in your mind when you're looking at that master facility plan, because we want to have the most conducive learning environment possible for our kids. So that's all I have. And then just be visible. We love it when you guys come to our stuff. So thanks. Come to our stuff and see the great things we're doing. School culture. So some strategies we're using for school culture to target that. Again, we're targeting attendance very heavily to make sure. And again, I'm not going to list everything that we've listed in there. Those are just some of the ways that we're targeting that. Responding, and then we are responding consistently to our impact surveys and our quality of school climate and safety surveys. That gives us great information and allows us to make changes as we see needs. With our quality and school climate and safety surveys from last year, we saw an increase in 78% of our questions. So that lets us know that, we are on the right track, and we are going to continue to focus on that. For PLCs and collaboration, so planning days, again, amazing. They're on the calendar, as well as the content-specific planning days with district collaboration. Our K-2 teams planned by grade level, 3 to 5 planned by vertical teams. And then we provide also additional planning opportunities after school or on breaks where teachers are paid a stipend. So we prioritize that with our funds as well. And then for data-driven decision-making, a lot of our PLCs spend their time analyzing data. So looking at our end of the unit data, looking at our goal setting, and then monitoring through Mastery Connect through all of our formative assessments, our DIBELS monitoring, and then just celebrating students and teacher successes. We regularly celebrate in this building. You'll see our goal posters all up and down the halls. In morning assembly, again, that's one of the biggest times we build that school-wide culture. Kids are cheering each other on. We use a lot of the Larry Bell strategies that we learned last year during that time. So just really celebrating success whenever it comes our way. Next is teacher retention. So when I went back and looked at our exit surveys, which I am always hounding poor Kippenbrock for, and he is great about getting them to me because I want to know, what more can we be doing to retain our teachers? The two most common things we hear are workload and student behavior, even from some of our veteran teachers that leave. So we have listed several of the supports we have put in place that target those areas. And then I also have some information just about last year, how many teachers we lost and kind of where they went. And then monitoring for that really is our impact survey. So we are eager to get those results this year. Our team lead feedback, and then our mentoring. We put mentoring in place this year. That was something that I just knew had to happen. We haven't had K-tip in years for new teachers. We've had emergency certified teachers, luckily none this year. But when we have that, we want to make sure we're giving them the support that they need to be successful. So I did some research over the summer and just found some different school mentoring programs that they had in place, and then adapted it for our needs. I shared it with the other principals in the district, and it gives us monthly checklists. This is what you need to talk to your mentee about. These are things that you can make sure you're hitting upon and supporting them with. And then there's also just an open dialogue section where they can ask what they need. And then that's turned into me monthly, so I can kind of keep a pulse of how our new teachers are doing. Professional development. So feedback from teachers, staff like having options. They've been really, really happy with the PD Academy the last few years. They enjoy peer-presented PD opportunities. They like hearing from other people that are doing this work because, it's authentic to them. They know these people are not just saying it. They're people that are in our buildings every day doing it. They say the PD is relevant to the needs. New teachers often do feel a little overwhelmed about the amount of PD at the beginning of the year, but they also recognize its importance. There's a lot for our new teachers, but it is very important professional development that they need. Monitoring, we monitor the success of our professional development through our walkthroughs, monitoring our school goals that align with the professional development we've been doing, coaching and principal walkthroughs to monitor effective implementation of our different PD, and then team lead feedback is another area that we monitor that. Curriculum development. So we do follow the district guide for all instructional pacing. We use our UPOs that are on the district website. We're using those at our planning days. And then we monitor that again through weekly observations, unit planning feedback. We are in that work with them at planning days. I lead one of the district planning days for one of the grade levels. When we do planning on our staff planning days here at Latonia, the ones that are built into the schedule, we are in those classrooms working with teachers when they're planning, developing those with them. So obviously we are very aware on where we're at in our pacing. Our instructional coach is watching the pacing closely. And then our assessment analysis sessions also keep us, to make sure that we are on track with our unit planning organizers and our curriculum. And then last, technology. So all of our students K-5 now have iPads. We used to be half Chromebooks, half iPads. We have switched over this year. It went seamlessly. So thank you, Jamarcus. He was a huge help during that time. We do have several programs that we use with our technology, some for homework, some for finish early activities. We have some classes that are now using Google Classrooms and online interactive content notebooks within their rooms. And then we use Mastery Connect to keep track of all of our assessment data. So end of the unit assessments, formative assessments, all of that, the students complete that within Mastery Connect, and it's just a good hub for us to look at our data as a whole. And monitoring for that is the same. Most of our monitoring in this building is being in classrooms, looking at their unit plans, looking at their assessments within Mastery Connect. So just looking at what they're doing and working with them on developing those things. All right. That was a lot of information really quickly, and I know I talk fast. I'm sorry, Ms. Huff, I know, but I am going to open it up to any questions you may have.
Well, thank you, Ms. Meyer. That was great information to share. So we'll open it up for questions. I'll start on this side, Mr. Gastrite.
Yeah, thank you. Very exciting to hear everything that's going on, and I loved the data points you shared. I made notes throughout, so
Love it.
I haven't prioritized these, but so school data report, the kindergarten readiness, you said in 2023, 41% is where we're at. And I was wondering what percentage of your incoming kindergartners were coming from Biggs?
So last year, I don't know that off the top of my head, but we did have more last year than we had previous years. So I'm sorry, I do not know off the top of my head how many that was.
2023, is that this year?
That was this incoming year, yes.
So you had more last year, 2022?
So 24 students total. Look at you, Kim. Just got to write that out of your brain. Wow. This is why she's my second hand a lot of times. So 24 this year out of about 50. I think we're at 50 right now in kindergarten. So.
Also, let's see, Student Success Night. I wrote down how many parents
attended that night.
Yeah.
I would have to look back at our specific, or you know what? It might actually be in here on the second listed at the top. So Student Success Night, yes. We had 20 students with representation at that meeting, at that night. Yeah.
Super. And that's something that I know when I was on site-based at 6th District, we really struggled figuring out how to get parent engagement. And I'm kind of blown away by some of the numbers I'm seeing here. So I guess I just feel like it'd be good. I'm sure the FRCs discuss what's successful and kind of share out the same way our I teams do.
Yeah, I think they meet regularly as well.
So I think that's great. I think
and some events have higher success than others. There are definitely things that bring more people out than other things, but yes.
Right. No, I think that's a big part of what we've identified that we need to do is get our families as engaged as possible. So I'm really interested when you talked about the fact that our kids are more than test scores. And so we know that there are other things that we value at least as much as test scores in our kids. And I've always been challenged to figure out how we can measure those things because it's really hard to manage things that we don't measure. And so it'd be like, we have a lot of anecdotals, but I want to really challenge, I would say principals to think about what are the things we value, how can we measure them, and how do we self-report the things we value from our schools. All right, so that's just an aside, that's an observation. And so on the enrollment, increasing enrollment, I'm really interested in that because for me, the biggest opportunity we had to increase enrollment here was closing ninth district. And that was certainly something that, is always in the back of my head. I realized that, the district summarized what the efficiencies that would have come out of that move were. And I know that, at least personally, I was not in support of it without the district facilities, the district master plan being done, because we didn't know, necessarily what the next step after that was going to be. So are there things we can do that aren't the closure of a school to increase enrollment? I guess what I'm thinking of is we did get some information about demographics, and, I've been talking with Ken quite a bit about this recently. There's a suggestion that, we might have, upwards of 6,000 school-age kids in Covington in the catchment areas that would go to our schools, and yet we know our enrollment's at 3,800. So it just feels like there are kids out there, and when we get reports from other schools who say they have our kids, and we do the math, it's not adding up.
Well, and I know I requested from Suzanne Thompson last year, any students we knew that weren't going to our schools in the primary, and I reached out to those families to try to convince them to come to us. We did not have a lot of luck with that, but we tried.
Well, I think that as part of our district master plan, we will be focus grouping parents who are not currently choosing Covington schools as the option for their families. So I would keep those names if you have them, especially people you think that would share with us. And I'm sure you got some feedback, maybe.
Oh, I mean, people didn't say a lot. They were just like, no, thank you. We're happy where we're at, things like that. But I do know right now we have one school, I think, that is really, really full as well. So I don't know if there's been any discussion of district lines or just looking at that in the meantime. Yes.
Agreed. I think all that is all that I'm very open to that conversation. Sorry. I apologize.
He's got a lot for me.
No, it's
great.
It was a great presentation. So, how many teachers do you have total in the building?
So certified teachers, we have 12, 13, about 20, maybe.
Okay. So I know you said you had 19% that were new this year, right? So we're talking about, that's 4 new teachers.
So I'd have to look back. We might have about 22 when I think about our extra support people, but yes. Yeah. Yeah, we have, let's see, 1, 2, 3, a brand new kindergarten teacher, 2 new first grade teachers, second grade teacher. I'm trying to think. And I think our 3, 4, 5 has been they're consistent. We still got them.
Over the years, like, is that pretty average?
It was higher last year. Yes, we lost more last year.
And what is the impact to you when you have 5 new teachers?
It's significant. It's significant, yes. And not that new teachers don't do a great job. We have found some really great people that are working really hard. They just have to develop their knowledge still. There's a learning curve there, and they will get there. They have the supports and stuff to get there. It takes time. So it definitely affects, student learning overall, because it's going to take time to develop them to the level that, a veteran teacher gets to.
Yeah, that's great. So last question. When you're talking about technology, it made me think a little bit about something that I call 21st century skills. And I think that when we look at design for education, we're really trying to focus on how we build those 21st century skills, which are a lot around collaboration, but also communication of ideas and using the best medium for that. And I'm just wondering, it's not always just about the technology, but what are the skills we're going to try to teach behind that? And do you feel, and maybe this is a reflection thing, but I would think about, as we get into the facilities master plan, what do we have opinions about what those skills are and how well either our facilities or our PD is in supporting elevating those skills? Because, like Mr. Garrison says, we're teaching kids to be prepared for their futures, not ours, right? So how do we make sure we're trying to understand their future and prepare them for that?
And I agree, it's a challenge that we are ready to take, but we are open to ideas too, because I do feel like that is something where we have basic technology things in place, but it could definitely go further.
All right. Done.
Great questions. Ms. Edlin.
I'll just say you answered most of my questions. Thank you for all your hard work. It's evident that you have a great passion for your school and your community.
Thank you.
And if you've not attended a morning meeting with this bunch, you need to.
It's a good
lot
time.
of fun. It is a good time.
We're
So,
racing, we're climbing rock wall, we're doing all kinds of fun stuff to get them here having a good time in the morning before their day starts. So I'm glad that you came and got to experience that with us.
and when she talks about bringing the data in, you think, oh, you're talking about data with the kids they really take ownership of the data. It's really amazing to see.
Thank you.
And the way you do it in such a kid-friendly way, it's great. So thanks for all your hard
Thank
work.
you.
Mr. Simpson.
Nothing to add. I think you're doing a great job, great presentation, and just kind of to echo what my colleagues have been saying. It's great not to go first because a lot of great things are already said before that. But yeah, great job and thanks for the presentation.
All right, thank you.
Mrs. Huff.
Wow, what a presentation.
Oh, well, thank you.
I want to thank all of you, all your staff, and your students for everything that they do for us. I know in my community, we have 33 3-year-olds. And most of those parents don't plan sending their children to Covington Independent. But one parent did say something to me. If I had a choice of which school in Covington Independent that I would go to, then I may reconsider. And I think it really opened my eyes. I mean, I know we have school choice, but in a different light.
Mhm.
And I really do believe in what you said, that our students are more than data. You know, we have to look at them emotionally and mentally, and to make sure that as a whole,
Mhm.
they are doing okay. And I appreciate everything that you've done.
Thank you.
Mr. Garrison, anything to add? Well, I'll just add again my thanks for being here. Thanks to your staff, your teachers for being here as well. Always makes me very proud to be a Latonia Cardinal every time I
We're
come back.
always happy to have ex-Cardinals return.
That's right. I do appreciate it. So thank you so much for the update.
All
I
right, thank
appreciate
you all. Have a great night.
All right. Next on our agenda, we have our school council meeting minutes from November. Are in your packet. I don't believe Mr. Kippenbrock is here, so if you have any questions, address those with him. Anything anyone wants to bring up on that? If not, we'll move to number 3. Ms. Lindbergh is here to present Pearson Benchmark 1 data.
So in your package, you will find the Pearson benchmark data for benchmark number 1. The first administration took place in late October, early November. The plan is to give the assessment 3 times per year. It is aligned with the standards on our curriculum and pacing guides. The first assessment only assessed standards that had been taught up until that point. The assessment is cumulative, so assessment 2 will do all of unit 1 and benchmark 2 standards. It's a multi-purpose assessment for us. The big one is to determine what standards our students have mastered up until that point and what needs to be retaught and remediated. Number 2, it's predictive for KSA. Our goal is to know going into the assessment how our students are going to perform. And then it's part of our balanced assessment system. Our goal is to create a system where teachers give formative assessments in the classroom daily that predict how students are going to perform on end of unit assessments. Our end of unit assessments are going to predict how students perform on this benchmark. And then this benchmark is going to predict how our students are going to perform on KSA. That's what we're working on right now, is creating that system where we know where every student is every day in our district. A highlight, I'm sure you guys have had the opportunity to look at this, but a highlight that I see in the data is our reading data. That's the one place in the district where we are K-12. Our curriculum has been developed. It's been through a full quality control process, and it's been implemented 2 years now. So we're starting to actually see the results of that particular curriculum. Our math curriculum, we saw, or with ELA reading, just let me point out that 95% of schools and grades went up from their KSA results. In math, we have a lot of places that have been quality controlled, and 70% of grades in schools went up in that area. So in the places where we have a developed curriculum, we're starting to see results on assessments. Do you have any questions about the data?
Mr. Simpson?
I know that there's been a little bit of an improvement, which I'm really excited about. And I'm showing, just kind of looking at these, you kind of highlighted some of the bright spots. And in your opinion, what are some of the places of concern that we should be looking at as a district?
Middle school and high school science and social studies, we are well aware that that's an area that we need to work on. Our students are underperforming in those areas. Part of it is that we don't have a developed curriculum, and part of it is that we're still learning how to teach those standards to the level that they're going to be assessed. But we're aware of it. The principals at both levels are aware of it, and they are working on curriculum. They're working with teachers on planning on a regular basis. So we're hoping and planning to see improvement in those areas.
Thank you.
I would also add high school math. We have some real concerns there as well.
Yes.
I think most of their departments, brand new teachers, a lot of emergency certified. So high school math, algebra, geometry, we've got some concerns there.
Thank you.
Ms. Edlin?
So in many ways, many people feel as though the social studies assessment is somewhat correlated to the reading assessments and how well students read. Do you believe that there is a correlation between those scores?
Absolutely, and I see the same thing in science. It's very heavily dependent on reading. Right now, we all grew up, the teachers who are teaching now grew up with being able to learn facts and perform well on assessments. Assessments at the state level are not designed like that anymore. Pearson is not designed like that anymore. So we do have to get our students reading at higher levels. We need to get them reading data, graphs, charts, analyzing information. So there's a lot of those higher level skills that we need to get to before our students are going to be able to perform well on these assessments. But yes, absolutely. The better they read, the better they do on a science and social studies assessment.
Thank you for sharing. My only concern with this data is when I look at TLC, we see our students, some of our more vulnerable students, I would say, are disproportionately not performing compared to their peers.
And the difficult thing about TLC is it's an apples to oranges assessment every time. The 15 students who were assessed for benchmark 1, 5 of them may be the ones assessed for benchmark 2, and it may be 10 more because our goal with TLC is to transition them back into the schools. And if we're successful, they're back at the high school or the middle school taking the assessment, and new or different students are taking it. So that's a difficult one.
So the data may change because the student population fluctuates.
Absolutely.
It's an important note for the board
Yes.
to understand that.
And if a student is new to TLC and they had been struggling academically at their home school, then they're going to come in lower than they might if they had been at TLC for a month or two and learned the processes and started to perform academically there.
What does that transition process look like from where a student transitions to TLC and then transitions back to their school?
That is not my lane. Mr. Grine or Mr. Garrison, can you speak?
Ms. Duty, would you like to come to the microphone?
Good evening. When you go to TLC, it's a 40-day program, and so there's 4 levels of 10 days. You can get out as quick as 40 days. However, if you do not earn your points on day 3, then you repeat day 3 until you earn your points. Then once you qualify for transition, we are kind of working on, Ms. Capano's done a great job of really trying to formalize that. So she'll reach out to me with the data from SST to request approval of transition to the middle or high school. And she's also done a great job of including the teams at the middle and the high school so they could review that data and feel comfortable about the students transitioning back to the middle or high school. However, she's also done a great job of advocating that these students are not perfect. Obviously, it's about comparing themselves to themselves. And so just because they're ready to transition back doesn't mean that they're going to be a model student compared to their peers. It just means that they're in a better place themselves than they were before they got there.
Thank you for sharing that.
Do you have any other questions about the transition?
No, I appreciate you speaking to it.
Great.
We were recently, my peers, we were at a KSBA conference, and they spoke a little bit about how children, when they transition to alternative settings and then they transition back, sometimes for children it's like having a scarlet letter, because they come back to their what would be their home school from TLC, and they're still viewed as that child even though they've had experiences of interventions. And so I think it's important to start thinking about how are we transitioning our students back to their school, and how are we empowering our staff to help support those children, which is another conversation, not in your
Sorry.
section, but
We are working on that. I appreciate your input on that. And Ms. Capano's doing a great job with that. Sarah Grayman, because of some of our students, there are students with disabilities. She and I are also continuously meeting, trying to get better at that transition process. And I also know that the middle school this year adopted some sort of transition contract to where they sit down with the students when they transition back, and there's a 30-day period to where we're monitoring student behavior so we can be preventative. And so if they are violating the code of conduct with repeated level 2 behaviors or even a level 3, that they can transition back to TLC without going through a formal hearing. And I think that that's been very helpful because there's a layer of accountability, and it's not always needing to take up all of the resources through a hearing where the parent has to come in again to sit down and meet through a hearing process when they just returned and they violated the level 3 code of conduct. So I think that we also need to get better probably at the philosophy, in the sense that some of the kids like TLC. They like it. It's a smaller class size. They feel more comfortable. And some of those kids are struggling with some mental health issues that they have immediate support access through the Children's Home of Northern Kentucky. So really making sure that we can collaborate with all resources so they feel comfortable coming back to the middle and high school. So there's a lot of parameters, but we would love to invite you to participate in some of those conversations too, if you have input moving forward.
I appreciate it. And thank you for allowing the sidebar. Thank you.
Of course. Any additional questions? Mrs. Huff?
Question, not necessarily what you were just talking about, but is it possible that for TLC, that once they get there, they stay there until you do your assessments? No, I'm not.
Capacity probably with the numbers.
And the ultimate goal is to always keep students in their least restrictive environment. So I would find it difficult to keep a student in a restrictive environment longer than they needed to be there for the sake of an assessment.
I understand that, and I totally understand that, but think about this outside of the box. If that student is more comfortable at TLC, then academically, they're probably going to do better. So it's just food for thought.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Mr. Gastrite.
Quick. When are we going to expect the next data set?
The next assessment is in February.
Okay.
And then we usually bring it to our cabinet. Once we have the data, it's a 3-week assessment window. So the end of February, we'll take it to cabinet. You'll see it in March.
Okay.
And then the third benchmark you should see at the end of the year, May.
Super. And then I have a question. When we look at high school benchmark 1, algebra 1, it says 3. That means 3% of the kids scored distinguished or proficient.
Yes, sir.
Correct?
Mm-hmm.
And that's honestly not a lot different than what we saw in KSA.
Okay.
8% on KSA. So we know that we are not hitting the standards at the level they need to be. We know that we're not addressing the needs of students. Mr. Magner is aware of that. We're working on the curriculum. We're working on what instruction looks like in a math classroom. Because if our scores look like this, we know that there are multiple layers that we need to address and fix.
I think it'd be good to get maybe updates on what you come up with, and just so we're aware, because we hear the math scores are low, but
It's significant.
dire.
Yes, absolutely.
We probably could go over some of the things we're working on right now, such as curriculum development in the math department, trying to train those teachers up. Science and math, I think Ms. Lindbergh can tell you perfectly. I'll try to sum it up real quickly. We teach a certain way in science and math. Well, like she said, we're assessed a different way than we're being taught. So we've got to start teaching, our teachers have got to start teaching kids to apply what they're learned, rather than maybe back when, I know in my math classes, it was more, can I do the arithmetic? Can I do the multiplication? But now the questions are more, Ms. Lindbergh, you do a better job of saying this, so help me out here.
For real life.
Yes, they're more
Word
application
problem.
It's the
level.
That
application.
try
yes.
to make you think, oh, this
Right.
is a algebra problem.
Right.
So you got one more level.
Yeah, rather than them giving you the equations, it might be written out for you, and you've got to set up the equation, and so we're not going to that rigor yet, and so we're working on that in mathematics and science.
Yes, we are.
Well, I'm tremendously excited that we have a system in place that we can start to measure growth and know when we need to adjust things. I'm a
Absolutely.
little disappointed at where we're starting, but
And I think sometimes when you talk about they're assessed differently than we teach, you hear teach to the test, and that's absolutely not what we want, what we encourage teachers to do. We want them to teach to the rigor and level of a standard so that they're competitive with kids from Fort Thomas and can do the same kind of work that they're going to be competing with when they get out into the workforce.
Ms. Edelin.
Sorry to come back to me, but as we're looking at trends and we're thinking about like gaps in terms of transition to each grade level, are we seeing any sort of trends to when the data becomes more negative in terms
We do
of?
see the trend that there's a decline when they go to middle school, and then there's a decline again in high school. So creating that vertical alignment, and we've done that with our curriculum in ELA is a perfect example. When we quality controlled the ELA curriculum at the middle school, we had an elementary teacher and a high school teacher in attendance to help align everything. At the high school, there was an a middle school coach who was part of that process. So we're trying to create alignment vertically so that students have the same expectations and they increase appropriately from K to 12.
Do we provide any opportunities for like math camp or a summer bridge program that would allow students that are not where they need to be an opportunity for additional support?
We have an amazing summer program that addresses a lot of those needs. It's academically based. When they develop their curriculum for the summer program, each school has the autonomy to look at what students didn't do well on during that year. They develop their units and plans around what their students need in their building. So we do look at that every summer.
Okay.
And Stacy Strotman could provide you data on how those students perform when they come back.
Okay. And I do know this may not be a question for you as much as it may be for Stacy, but I do know that at one point Covington Partners was providing a level of mentorship to students, whether math, I believe it was in reading, maybe math as well. Or is that opportunity available for middle school and high schoolers to have I'm seeing a nod.
I know
No?
there's mentoring programs. I don't know if they're academically based. That would be a Stacy Strotman question.
A tutoring.
I mean, we have the one-to-one reading program through the Northern Kentucky Education Council, but that program, that's a specific curriculum. It only goes up to second grade, I think.
Yes.
Okay.
So
Okay. Thanks.
awesome.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Lindbergh, for presenting this information. I do want to just take borrow a word from Mr. Gastrate, the scores at the high school are dire. And, I also appreciate that we have, data to give us a roadmap where to go, but this isn't new. So that is my concern, is that we just keep seeing this dire situation at the high school, and we got to figure it out for the sake of our kids. So I'll move on to item number 4, which is the salary schedule amendment. Mr. Kippenbrock is not here, but do you have any questions that perhaps Mr. Grine or Mr. Garrison can answer?
Mr. Grine's going to go
For you.
over that real quickly. Mr. Kippenbrock, I think, was under the weather a little bit, so Mr. Grine said he would sub in.
The two things, one is the archery program that the high school is starting. Several of the schools around this area have a program, and they were asked to initiate one at Holmes. So Mr. Ellis reached out to other schools in the area that had the program to see what the salary was that they were paying for the coaches. And so that's where he came up with the dollar amounts for the archery program. If you have any questions about that. And then the other one is the hourly rate. And what the issue is when we created the salary schedule the last time, or looked at it the last time, we had specific grants and different things that were identified. We weren't getting SIF money at that time, and now we have some SIF money, and we don't want to pay somebody to do after-school tutoring that we're using SIF money less than what we're using for ESS or one of our other funding sources. So we're just trying to be consistent with that.
Okay. Any questions? Start this side. Ms. Edlin?
Has there been consideration of funding for the archery program in general? I assume that there will be bows and
They've
arrows
already
needed.
purchased some of that stuff, yeah. Our ROTC teacher is going to be the head coach, and then another high school teacher. One of the career tech teachers is the assistant, and they're pretty excited about it. And they're going to use, I think, the indoor facility for the practices and things like that.
Very cool.
Mr. Simpson?
So as it explained, so this is a supplement to someone's salary already, as far as the
Yes.
head coach and the.
Yeah, all of your athletics are extra monies that go towards the thing. The person can choose, do I want it paid over the whole year? Do I want half of it at Christmas and half at the end of the year? Do I want it all at the end of the year? Just gives them some different incentives on how they want that money.
You said that's for all coaches?
It's for all coaches in the salary schedule. So if you look through all the different things that are related, there's academic coaching and salaries, and then there's athletic and extracurricular.
Is there, and this might not, maybe for next year, or is there a way that we can identify which ones are supplemental and which ones are kind of like towards the regular salary? Meaning that if one person is getting paid multiple, like one position is getting paid multiple, if that position could be kind of saying this is combined with another staff member, it just helps for me anyway, just to show that, like, when I saw this in my head, I thought one person is getting paid $1,800, and maybe there's a decision-making process to go through that. Now I know it's actually combined with another position or another person, but it would be helpful just to see if it's
And that's, this year, we're working on kind of organizing all the supplemental contracts. And so that's a project that we've been working on to make sure that we're consistent and we've got a good handle on it. And you get like the academics, schools have extra, if you got some extra Title I money because of the number of students that you have, and you couldn't quite buy a third teacher, but you have some extra money up. So there's principals that are saying, I want to reward, these people are doing extra work for me, I want to pay a supplement for them. And so the only point there is you got to make sure it's on the salary schedule. We need to list it the way it's listed on the salary. So I'm a lead teacher, I'm going to be a lead teacher, and I'm going to mentor somebody at this building. And so we've got things like that that are happening that don't really affect the general fund, but that's the whole point of what she's trying to organize and get together. So we have a better handle on how much money we got for supplements and all that kind of stuff.
Mrs. Huff.
I thought, correct me if I'm wrong,
Okay.
that we could not pay any kind of supplement or bonus pay for performance or extra duties as far as, well, they do a lot for me. I want to give them a little bit more money.
They have to be doing something specific. If you're mentoring a teacher after school, and we can award some additional funds so that she's taking after school time. We're buying some of her after school time so that she can stay and do some extra things with a teacher, a new teacher in her building. That's what principals are saying. Hey, this is what we need. I need to get somebody to be helping my new teachers. And now, hey, I can do it. If I got this money, I can do it this way or that way. So there is not a rule that you can't do that.
You can see the supplements out here. The board has to approve those. For example, if I'm a lead teacher, that's because maybe, you remember the old K-tip framework? I'm either leading a department or I'm leading a team of teachers. So that would be why that teacher would get an extra $1,000 because they're leading a group. They're doing extra work is what we're saying on top of their normal teaching position. So that's what the supplements, you got instructional supplements, you got athletic supplements. So
And that's consistent across the state, I would say.
Miss Edlin.
You made me think of a question. How are we ensuring equity in the process by which supplements are granted? And particularly, I'm thinking about transitional supplements that are on the schedule because they range from $1 to $8,500 as far as a transitional supplement. And to me, that leaves a lot of room that could get gray in terms of who's receiving these sorts of supplements, why, how they're chosen, etc.
Give you an example of transition supplement at the middle school. They had a teacher that quit at the end of September. Mr. Turner had other teachers in that same department say, look, I'll give up my planning time. I'll teach one extra period. This teacher said, I'll teach one extra period. So they have 4 people picking up the 4 periods that person was teaching. And so what we can do is we can pay them 1/7 of their salary because there's a 7-period day and they have to plan after school so that's the way we've created. So that's where the transition supplement comes in. It's got to be kind of a unique thing. So we don't do the transition supplements very much. I know when Mr. Garrison got here, there were a lot more people on transition supplements, and that's something that he's been pretty stingy about.
I remember you explaining this at the last meeting. I guess my concern is it not being an equal opportunity for those that may be interested in a 7-day course load, which as someone who has taught would not be of interest necessarily to me, but I think there could be some work done to create some greater criteria around this and how that is facilitated to ensure that we're being equitable in the district.
I think Mr. Turner's idea was not to be equitable. It was to be able to give the best teacher to those kids that lost their teacher. So he made sure that it was teachers that he felt like could do a good job teaching an extra class. You as a new teacher, none of those new teachers got selected to teach the extra class.
I don't disagree with you. I'm just saying if this criteria is institutional, it should likely be down as some sort of process that's transparent. That's my only comment. Thank you.
I got one question. I thought ESS we had to use a scale based on experience.
It always was until
Yeah.
last year.
Okay.
Suzanne worked with the state, came up with a new thing, and they changed it last year. It
Okay.
used to be
this many years experience, you were at $22 an hour. This many, you were at 24 and then 26, and the state made a change.
Okay.
Good question.
Yeah, and then my other one is I have some real concern about equity amongst coaches' stipends. Like we're paying head coaches from $1,800 up to $11,000 per head coach. Like, are there different I understand they're different sports, but are there different responsibilities? Is this just the marketplace? Is it a combination of
Combination of both.
But there's a
They-
lot of inequity there.
They reach out, they look at what are other districts paying. Again, we're trying to hold on to people, especially when you have good people.
And Mr. Brown, we went through the salary schedule. How many years ago, Annette? Was it about 3 or 4 years
Maybe
ago,
3 or
where we
4.
looked at every sale and every head coaching position, and we called around the different districts, and so it is a combination of how many student athletes you have.
It was actually
how long's your season?
it was actually 2016, the year
Was
I
it?
got married. That's how I remember.
Yes.
And part of that analysis was the athletic director at the time reached out to other surrounding school districts and said, okay, what are they making? They'd look into the sport, how long the sport lasts, how many practices. So there was a lot of looking into that, which that part of that then came to the committee to say, let's change what some people make. And I think then since then, the athletic director, when he sees a pocket of things that he's seeing that's not right with other surrounding districts, that's when he then comes and talks to Mr. Garrison and then us in Camden or the budget committee or something. So.
But any change has to be approved.
Yeah.
by the board.
Yeah. All right. Any additional questions about this amendment? All right. If there's no objection, we'll put it on the consent agenda. All right. Ms. Duty's here to talk about school calendars for the next couple of years.
Good evening again. I'm here to present on our calendar committee met. We are recommending 2 calendars this year, the 24-25 calendar and the 25-26 calendar. We decided to do that just to help with planning for all members of the school community, for parents, teachers, our administration. And so there are 2 calendars in front of you. Just a quick note, we do base this on a variable calendar, which is 1,062 hours versus student attendance time. What allows us to do that is starting school the Monday closest to Labor Day. So I wanted to let you know that. This is the way that we've done the calendar, I believe, last year as well. And I think that our KSA scores show with us being able to provide those teacher equivalency days that it is contributing to our student achievement. Would you like me to read through this?
No.
Okay.
No. I want to see if anybody's got any questions. Mr. Simpson.
I think this is, I trust that this is a good idea, but just out of curiosity, what are some specific ways that kind of planning for 2 years would help with help?
So what I've noticed, and I am new to this role this year, so I was fortunate enough to have a good committee with me. And I think a lot of us on the committee were also new. I think that we only had a couple of returning members. Miss Elin, is that correct?
I would agree. I was a newbie.
So I think that what happens is the expectation. For example, we got some input from our instructional team in the district, Ms. Lindbergh and Mr. Alter, because they have to plan for professional development sooner than what the calendar was coming out. And so that was really a key component, was developing the PD Academy that we all do in the summer, and just making sure that those equivalency days are heavier. I believe at the beginning of the year, that was some input from the teachers, not wanting those equivalency days at the end of the year when teachers are ready to get out of there to have their break, and just making sure that we're able to plan ahead for that. But to answer your question, it was really based upon, I feel, professional development on wanting to have those 2 calendars, and then also just thinking of our parents, and they want to plan ahead as well.
And I'd also say traditionally, we've always sort of tried to align with Kenton County, because our families get confused about whether or not we're in school, or, sometimes they make the mistake of, when they hear Kenton County might be out, they assume that we're out. And so that's some of our past history. We tried to align with Kenton County for the most part when we can. And I assume we've continued that practice.
We did do that. Unfortunately, we are in an off year of them. And so they are already there. we're kind of in betweeny, right? So they did their 2-year calendar last year, so they're going to be presenting one calendar. And so next year, I believe moving forward, that's the same model we're going to look into, that where we would present you with 2 now, but then when we meet as a calendar committee next year, then we're always 1 year in advance, if that makes sense.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any additional questions? Ms. Edlin?
I'll just add, there was a lot of great conversation, particularly around the importance of instructional days. I want to encourage you to potentially look at KRS 158.070. It outlines some of the parameters for the calendar committee and sort of the criteria by which you have to operate in order to create a calendar. And as a new person, it can be very confusing going into that meeting thinking, oh, you can change this, you can do that. But this KRS statute outlines a lot of particulars. And one thing that I think is important to know, it's in section F, is the variable calendar versus the instructional calendar. We talked a lot about that in the committee, but I was a big proponent of how can we get more instructional days, those equivalency days, so that teachers have more time to work. But because of these parameters, we're really limited. And actually, we're at our max, is my understanding, to this statute with those 9 teacher equivalency days. So I want to make sure that I explain that, because I know we had lots of teachers saying, we love these days. They're great. How can we get more of them? The statute limits us in some ways. Also, there was an emphasis on if we can get out a little bit before June, because we know that our staff prefer a calendar that allows them to get out in June. So I thank you for your hard work and Ms. Collins' hard work and the group of the committee. I felt like it was a very democratic committee, lots of great opportunities to share. And then the process of taking that back to stakeholders and getting feedback was very transparent. So I appreciate your leadership in this process. And I support this calendar that's in front of you.
Just a couple questions for me. One, was there any discussion on when we have some of those split weeks where we're having a Friday and a Monday off, and instead of doing that, doing a Thursday, Friday, or a Monday, Tuesday?
There was not any discussion about doing a Thursday, Friday, or a Monday, Tuesday. There was some discussion where people were requesting an extra day, and where they wanted an actual full 4-day weekend versus having 3 days off and then an equivalency day at the end of it. So they wanted a 4-day off and equivalency day on the 5th day. However, again, because of the parameters of the statute, that would push us into teachers needing to return the first week of June. And so that's why we had to push into the stakeholders, and we got some feedback from members of the community, the school community, or whoever they were representing, to see, would you rather have that 4-day parameter or 5-day and come in June? In terms of shifting it, there was no discussion in regards to that.
I get, like, it's just my logical brain thinking it would work easier if we're disrupting 1 week and not 2 weeks of the instructional calendar.
Sure.
But I obviously have full faith in the calendar committee. The one concern I had, though, is in the memo here, I'm seeing that we only had one parent because one was not responsive. Am I reading this right, that we were supposed to have 2 community members, but we had none?
So that's correct. And that's something that I'm a big person on, being self-reflective and just wanting to come up with my own areas of opportunity. And so I was reading that as well. And when we went through this process of just kind of trying to identify those people in the summer, or getting some help even from you all on who those members could be, so we could do some outreach to them prior to kind of that deadline of meeting. So yes. And 2, I noticed that Miss White, she served as a parent representative and a classified representative, versus getting 2 parent representatives and 2 community representatives, and also having 2 classified. So I promise you, next year I will be on top of that, and we'll make sure that that is definitely something that is addressed.
I appreciate that. I think that's
important.
It's disappointing to see that, and it is very important to have that robust kind of feedback. So, all right.
And I definitely think we could use some feedback from you all on who we could reach out to in terms of like community members specifically, who might be interested in joining our committee.
Great. If there's no objection, we'll put this on the consent agenda for our next meeting. All right. Thank you, Ms. Duty.
Thank you so much.
Director Birchie's here with the report of the treasurer. Several items.
The first item on the agenda is the charts and spreadsheets that I bring to the board every November. Just keep in mind, this is a snapshot of a day that I pick in November. It's usually late November. It's after a lot of staff have been hired. I can crunch salary and fringes, but by all means, things change daily with different things. So it is a snapshot. So there's 3 charts in the packet. One has, the first chart is all funds. So I'll just give you a few highlights of each one, and then you can dive into it. And of course, get back with me if you have more questions. So all funds, the budget's at about $108 million. General fund makes up about 58%. That is our operation budget. And then you have Fund 2, which is grants, which is about 30%. So those are your 2 biggest funds. And then you have all those other little funds that then add up to the $108 million. So that is all funds spread or chart. The second one, I focus on general fund revenue and expenses, the second and third chart, because that is the operation budget. And so I dive a little bit deeper into that. So the revenue is at about $62.5 million in revenue in general fund. Your big revenue streams is your property tax, which is roughly about 30%. SEEK is about 21%. Then you have on behalf payments at about 22%. Keep in mind those on behalf payments is the state pays for anybody that's general fund health insurance. And then there's like technology on behalf payments. So they pay it on our behalf. So that's why it's called on behalf. But we put it in the financials on the revenue and expense side, net effect 0 to the dollars actually coming into the district. So it is a big ticket expense, 22% of the general fund budget. And then the fourth biggest stream is your beginning balance. We're sitting at about 22%. And then you'll have all those other little revenue streams that are also listed on the chart. So when you go into the expense side of the 62.5 million, some of the big expense side is the school allocation side, which is about 37%, along with district-wide departments is about 11%. And I didn't isolate some bigger departments not to have that percentage look so big, because a lot of people like to know about transportation and the technology department. So you'll see a little bit of those. You'll see our building operations is about 4%. So that's the custodian side of it. And so then you'll see a lot of other little percentages on there, and you'll see contingency at 10%, a little over 10%. So those are the 3 charts. Then what I do is I do a narrative for you. So if you're looking at the chart, you kind of want to know a little bit more about each one of the percentages. I started to do that a couple years ago just to give information in regards to what some of those numbers mean and how the numbers come up to. So that's what I call the narrative. And so you'll see that on the all funds chart. You'll see it on the general fund revenue and expense chart. So that's in there as well. Then you'll have the spreadsheet, like people like me that like to see numbers in the spreadsheet. And so I do it in the spreadsheet format. So that is also listed in there by receipts, which is the revenue streams, and kind of breaks down the numbers for you. And you see the exact numbers versus the percentages. Then you'll see the disbursements, which is your expense side, and you'll see that by function, because that's a lot of things. You'll see your monthly financial by function, your annual financial report by function. And so that's where we report a lot of things to the state by function. So you'll see that spreadsheet. And then the last spreadsheet, I just dumped the numbers to show you the prior year and this year. So it's a lot of good wealth of information to be transparent to our taxpayers. We do put it on the website after you as the board see it. Mr. Garrison has copies electronically. Sometimes he takes it out to the community when he's at meetings and things. So we just like to be transparent and put that information out. Again, it's a snapshot in time. It does change. It's not a perfect science, but I mean, it's the best budget you're going to get to be able to see with minor changes throughout the year. So I know we have some new people, so I will answer any questions anybody has.
Mrs. Huff.
What is on behalf payments? I didn't remember that one.
On behalfs is where the state pays for our health insurance if you're a general fund employee, as well as they pay for some technology. On behalfs, they help pay for Munis, our financial system, and other technology payments. On behalf, our debt payments, the FCC that they match. So all those add up to what's called on behalf payments.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Mr. Simpson.
The receipts, well, thank you for all this information. It's really helpful in kind of breaking things down. It's greatly appreciated. Just a question with the receipts. They're really even numbers. The receipts come in? Just curious. Do the receipts come in like they're all like very, very even numbers? No.
This is
off-dollar-
budget.
Gotcha.
So that's why I kind of try to round up. No, they do not come in
Okay, that's-
exactly like
well,
that.
Since it's budget, that makes more sense, and that's why I'm glad I asked the question.
But on the expense side, you'll see there's a lot of numbers because when I do salary and fringes, it comes out and I don't do rounding up on a lot of that. So that's why you see it that
All
way.
right, thank you. That makes sense.
All right. Thank you for that, Director Birchie. Next, we have the revised auditor contract for fiscal year 23.
Yes, over the last couple years, fortunately or unfortunately, we have had new GASB standards that the Accounting and Auditing Board passes down to auditors, which then pass down to us. 2 years ago, we had the lease standard that now we have to put on our financial reports. And anytime you implement a standard, it causes more work for the auditors to figure out how to implement that. And then it causes more work for me and my team to be able to actually get all the data they need. So last year it was leases. I had to bring that contract back to you. I think it was like $3,000 some $100. This year it's the software, which if you see on our expenses, we have a lot of software. So there's more data to look at. So it costs more. And so I received the bill just recently. I think it's $5,100 more. So we like to be transparent and bring this back to the board because that is a substantial amount difference in the contract. And so I have to then reach out to KDE and adjust that price and turn it into KDE as well. So I'm just bringing that to you as a board as well. Now the charts were informational. This I would want an approval.
Any questions for Director Birchie? I'm mad. So the way I calculate this from our original FY22 auditor quote,
16, 18.
our price has gone up 49% for auditing services. Now, I'm not done. I know we talked about this in the budget committee that the timing of how KDE mandates or how they get certain information out to you to be able to engage with an auditor, it hinders us from bidding out this service a lot of time to get qualified responses in time to get it. I just like this is something I want to advocate for because I just feel like we're being I think Barnes Dinick does a great job. I'm not saying they don't do a great job, but I do feel a bit held hostage that we can't try to competitively bid this with a contract that's gone up 49% in 1 year.
I've voiced my concern to Barnes Denning over the last couple years that their prices have gone up. One is they look at the industry standards, so that is part of the price increase. And then these two GASB standards, of course, add to it. This standard alone raised it 17, 18%. What I was uncomfortable with was why didn't I know about this beforehand? So I voiced my concern the last 2 years in regards to that, because again, I'm getting a bill that I exactly said, I feel held hostage. I have to pay. Told Mr. Garrison that. And I said, I had to do a lot of the work. So I can only imagine if I didn't do a lot of the work, how much the bills would have been. And so the implementation of these standards, every year you don't have a new standard. So I don't think there is one coming up. So that'll help us. I actually just had a KDE webinar yesterday, I believe, and the audits were talked about, and they recommended start getting out an RFP now. So that's what I'll probably try to do at the beginning of the year. The problem is auditors don't know what they have to audit. It doesn't come out to KDE. So you can only say, hey, this is what last year was. It might change. And so then once we get it, that's where that window is not a very big window. KDE also made comments about people are having trouble finding auditors. The profession has gone down. There's not as many people doing school audits. That they actually had a couple districts that they could not find an auditor to audit, and legally we have to be audited.
Right.
And so, they said that in this KDE webinar. They didn't offer any guidance on how to get auditors to want to take us as school districts. They just said, well, you might want to do it early, but then they're not putting the contract out early. So I will do that to do early, but I'm just going to say we're going to get bids in, and then it's going to have to get adjusted once we get the contract.
And obviously, my frustration is not with you. My
Yeah.
frustration is with
Thank
this
you.
crazy system that we have to deal in. But it's very frustrating. But I just had to voice that frustration. Is there a motion to approve the revised auditor contract for fiscal year 23?
So move.
My second.
Becky, we call the roll, please.
Yes.
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 So in the excitement of the audit being presented last time, and we had such a great audit, we forgot to get you as a board to approve it.
How about that?
And so that's why it's back on this calendar. So Barnes Dannon came in and presented it and went over it, and we just legally did not have you as a board approve it. And so we need that.
So move.
I second.
Becky, you call the roll, please.
Yes.
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 And then I believe my last information is the monthly financials and warrants. So you'll see the balance sheet, the monthly report, the spreadsheet showing how much money we have in our bank and all our bank accounts. I get excited when the interest rate, we get more and more money. So that excites me so that we can do more great things here for Covington kids, along with all the warrants. And so I know some of you reach out to me on warrants, so I divvy them up and make sure I get your questions answered. But you don't have to do it before. You can always do it after, and we will get you what you need to know.
Any questions on the financials or the warrants? If not, is there a motion to approve?
I move to approve the monthly financials and the warrant expenditure report.
I second.
Becky, you call the roll, please.
Yes.
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 Thank you.
Thank you, Director
Thank
You
Birchie.
for always taking my calls. I appreciate it.
You're welcome.
All right, we have the consent agenda. Would anyone like anything pulled off the consent agenda?
Nope.
I'm going to ask that we pull off the approval of the minutes for the November 30th meeting, and I'll explain why in a second. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda as items 12 and 13?
So move.
I second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So on the approval of the minutes, I'd like to make a motion that we approve them with an edit to our action on the selection of vendor to develop a facilities master plan. The board's action was to direct the superintendent and staff to enter into contract negotiations and to bring that contract back to the board for approval, not necessarily select and kind of approve. I just want to make sure it was clear in the minutes exactly what we were doing. So if you're okay with that amendment, I'll ask for a motion to approve the last meeting minutes with that change.
Did you catch
That's what I
that?
was gonna ask.
Okay.
And I'll get you after.
All right.
Yeah.
I so move.
I second.
All in favor indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you for that. We have no individual approval items tonight. There's no addendum agenda. Do we have a report from the attorney?
Nothing to report this evening.
All right. We have new business. I know there are a couple things that we want to talk about. Mr. Gastright, do you want to talk about the district facilities master plan?
Yes, yes. So Mr. Kippenbrock and I did meet with the master planner to discuss the scope that we want them to submit a fee for. We're anticipating that as part of maybe our first meeting in January, having that information early enough for us to review it and discuss it. We did get some homework because in order to get this master plan complete before we have to vote on taxes again, we need to move quickly. So our homework has to do with thinking about members of certain committees they would like to have as part of the focus groups and the visioning process. So I have that email. I've shared it with Mr. Haggard. I don't know if I can send emails out to everybody. I'm still looking for some clarification on how we communicate as a board through email.
Sure.
last I heard is we should not be sending things out that might have comments flurrying around.
Generate
among us.
discussion.
So I
That,
sent it just to Mr. Haggard,
I think that's wise.
and then we can figure out how to distribute it. But we do have a window for getting those groups together, and I would say it'd be by the beginning of the year sometime.
Okay. So we have our first meeting of the new year scheduled already for the 11th. Is that right, Becky? Our organizational and our regular first meeting, tentatively, as long as we approve that meeting schedule. Is that too late? Because I guess what I'm trying to understand, I read the email, but are they asking us for a roster to just go ahead and start reaching out, or is it more like categories of people?
I think that I think they were saying sometimes it takes time to organize those committees, so that we should start that process.
Okay.
We will have notice ahead of time of when they're needed.
Can I ask
And
a
I will get some
question?
clarification. Yes.
Just because that might help me to
Yeah.
ultimately answer your question. Are these committees going to be formulated and then provide feedback to which maybe helps in negotiations with the? Okay.
It's not related to negotiation. This would be, once negotiated, they want to get started right away. But
Kind of want to do
from the
like,
approval time to
Yeah.
when we start, they're worried that it might be too short. So they're
Okay.
like, go ahead and start thinking about who's going to be involved. in that
well, I
process.
think one idea I had, so I think, they laid out kind of the vision for two different committees. And then additionally, I'll just put up really quickly, as they talked about in their presentation to us, so a community advisory team of around 40 to 50 diverse group of community members, private school parents, business owners, kind of what we had talked about. And then the educational visioning team, so 40 to 50 teachers representing all grade levels, and then 30 or so students representing middle school and high school students. So there's those two teams, plus asking a question, were there other groups that the school board may feel like need to have some specific targeting to understand?
Yeah.
There. So I guess one thing I'm curious about is I can, Mr. Gastor, I can forward this out to all the members of the board. If we have ideas of individuals who should be a part of this, we could forward those directly to the superintendent. So I'm sure you have some ideas on people who should be on this group, and teachers and students and things like that. And he can be kind of the coordinator of all that.
That works. And just to be clear, has this email been sent to Marianne yet?
Probably not. No.
Okay. As soon as we got that, then I can just give a definitive
Okay.
how we handle and make sure we get the information, how it should be delivered.
And then are we planning for a negotiated contract to come back to us at our first meeting in January?
I think we will have the first description of scope with the fee next week.
Okay.
Is my expectation. And then that would be something we could share out. Again, I guess we'd go to Mary Ann and Mr. Haggard first, and then we would figure out how to share that with the full board.
Well, I think if that's negotiated, then that's what we could, superintendent and I could put it on the agenda for our first meeting.
Yeah, and I think I'm sorry, I'm kind of remembering where we left things. So Mr. Kippenbrock and I are negotiating within the window we were given authority to negotiate with. So if we get the first fee next week, unless it's within that.
Gotcha. Maybe some back
We
and
would not
forth.
share it back. We might have some back and forth. But the hope is before the beginning of the year, we would have that negotiated fee. And there'd be enough time to get it on the. I explained the informational and then vote process. And I asked them to let us know what the urgency was so that if we knew we had to vote to approve it on the first meeting, or whether we could just review it, have them present it, and then have it approved them later. So they're going to get back to us.
Okay, great. Ms. Edlin, you had a question?
Just a point of clarification. for myself, are we just coming up with a list of individuals, or are we reaching out to those individuals right now?
I think just the list.
Yeah, because they probably want to do the communication out to folks.
It may be something to consider to as to what family events are going on in the district. We heard tonight a number of events, and how we could potentially partner with some of those schools in this work, and see if there's any opportunities where families, students are already going to be present.
I think we had talked about that. That was part of our questions to them, right? Could we kind of coordinate other things? Like we're going to convene people.
Just something to consider.
Bag out of the book.
The discussion came up as to the best way to engage the families of the district. And I think, for efficiency, fewer meetings are more efficient. But in terms of meeting our families where they're at, going to schools also seemed like it had its advantages. So I don't think we landed on a preferred approach. We discussed it. I think that the consultant's going to come back and suggest this is our recommendation. And, that's a variable that I don't know if the board would like me to come back and share what their suggestion is before we fully negotiate. Because if the board has a preference for, if you were to think you could have a north and a south community meeting, right? Or we could have one at each elementary, since there are neighborhood schools. The difference there then is we are paying for those additional meetings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I guess my thought process in this is that, we're hiring them as professionals who have done this work. They should be able to tell us kind of what the best practices are for the engagement that we have said we wanted. And then we, rely on that and kind of move forward. Mr. Simpson?
I do agree with that, kind of being working in that space of community input and community engagement. I do agree that they don't need to have that level of specificity at this time, but they need to ensure that we need to ensure that we're a member of some of those committees, so that some of these questions, some of these items could be identified at that time when they're starting to put together that level of community engagement, whether it's north or south or at each school. I think we do need to be on the committee to at least give our opinion, but yes, they are the professionals. Kind of circling back to kind of getting lists together, what I've been doing is starting to engage people that I think may be interested in letting them know that this is coming down the pike, that you might be, that we might need to kind of get your expertise. I would suggest that we do, when we invite individuals to our to these meetings, that it doesn't come from the consultant, that it comes from the school community, whether that be Mr. Garrison, or when we're looking at the parents, it might be from the teachers. But I would probably advise it not coming from the consultant.
Oh, and I think, but they need to be the ones that are coordinating the communication, like who that communication comes from. I think you're correct. It may need to be different people based on the audience, but they're the ones who need to kind of draft the communication for us, get it up.
We specifically asked that question, and they said they'll be writing the verbiage, but as far as the transmission of it would be coming from us.
So I will, I'll follow up with Mary Ann and Aaron tomorrow morning on that email, and then I'll pledge to get it out to us. You'll see kind of the description of what they're looking for in these teams. If you don't reply all, but send your suggestions or of individuals to the superintendent, you can kind of keep that compiled, and then that's what we can be ready to go once we approve a contract, if we're feeling good about that. All right, thank you, Mr. Gastrite and Mr. Kippenbrock, for negotiating that for us. Any other items for new business? I have one that I want to bring up as we're getting ready to go into the new year, and we'll be doing our our organizational meeting. I know, so I want to get your thoughts on doing a bit of a reorganization of our meetings as a school board. So, we had a wonderful event yesterday. Mr. Garrison, Mr. Alter, Ms. Stropman led a community meeting on our strategic plan. It was very well attended. We had some amazing students in the room leading us through some different thought exercises on how we start to operationalize the portrait of a learner. Got some good feedback from a lot of folks that we can take and move forward. So one of my questions I have to you is, as it stands right now, we just kind of have 2 regular meetings a month. They're kind of the same meeting, and we just kind of, maybe a couple different agenda items. So do we want to move into the direction of a true working meeting where it is just all informational, receiving reports from the superintendent and his team, having some maybe a bit more time for robust conversation, and then having a true business meeting where it's just things that came up at the informational meeting that staff is going to request us to take action on. We take action there. It would include probably Director Birchie's report of the treasurer, and some of those regular things that we approve each month. My thought process in this too is that we would kind of design this working meeting to be based around the big goals of the strategic plan. And so we stay focused and give the staff that focus of, these are the things that we have said, that we want to prioritize in our school district. And then, we could work with the superintendent. He can work with his team to figure out what those reports to the board look like on a monthly basis to give us some more time to discuss, what's being accomplished as part of the strategic plan, what roadblocks are coming up, what do we need to tweak, where do we need to put more resources, where do we need to reallocate resources. And so it keeps us focused on those big goals of the strategic plan and kind of keeps us focused so we're not kind of the next shiny thing here or there. I think also gives a lot better direction to the superintendent so he can give better direction to his team. So just a thought and conversation I wanted to put out here. We got some weeks to think on it before we come together for our organizational meeting.
Something we'll discuss at the retreat.
Well, I think we'll need to discuss it earlier in the year, like for our organizational meeting, as we set that meeting calendar to be clear to staff kind of what we'll expect. If you'd like, I can kind of put what I just said kind of in a draft kind of visual thing, so you kind of take a look at it. We won't discuss it via email, but you can kind of take a look at it. You can call me if you have questions, like what does this really mean? And then I think when the superintendent and I circle up at the beginning of the year, we can kind of take a look at any feedback you had and try to see what this could look like in terms of real life, not just theory.
I know in a previous meeting, I mentioned an opportunity about having some type of policy committee.
Yes.
And Principal Meyer brought forth how it's important to include various stakeholders when discussing policy. Yep. And would this be a time in which we would consider the adoption of that type of committee?
Yeah, I think at our organizational meeting is when we set the membership for all of our committees. I had a conversation with Mary Ann today about what kind of machinations need to take place for us to start a policy committee. Nothing really needs to take place, and other than we put it on the agenda for our organizational meeting, we assign members to it. We have, kind of a charge of the committee. We've done similar things as starting committees. Mr. Gastrite started a committee around kind of the IRBs and the pilot projects that we were working on. So that will certainly be on the agenda for our organizational meeting. All right. So I'll get it out in writing to you, reflect on it, just what you want to do over the holiday. But
one question, because I thought we talked about the organizational meeting being a short meeting.
It is.
And I'm hearing that we're going to be discussing 2 new items that need to be done before we move into the full meeting. Right?
Yeah.
So just want to be mindful that we don't set ourselves too big of an agenda for that.
Well, and let me get this in writing and out to you, and then we can have some one-on-one discussions about what that looks like, and we can see if we need to reevaluate that.
I have done a little personal research on policy committees and what they look like in Northern Kentucky. Is that an item I would be able to send out to the board that would be informational?
Informational, you can do that. I think my preference would be whatever you want to send out, if you can send it to us first, and we just able to take a look at it.
Any other items for new business?
There,
Mr. Simpson?
there was during the conference this past weekend, there were kind of two items that I thought could be really beneficial for us as a district. One is the continued use of the Kentucky counselors that are in schools right now. We have one counselor, a college counselor that's at homes right now by way of the Vista program. And so there is a cost. I think the cost, I think they said it was $8,000. But if there's a way to, that might be a low-hanging fruit to assist with the college prep, or actually the workforce readiness of our students, additional career coaches for us, if we decide to go that route, or if the school decides to go that route. And in addition, and this might be something that we talk about at the retreat, is that the use of restorative justice practices in our schools. I think that might be a way to help with a lot of the issues, the kind of like the outlying issues that we see our kids facing in our district.
Okay.
That's all I got.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Gastrite?
Just to piggyback on what Mr. Simpson said about the college coaches, this sounds like an incredible deal, and I don't know who college and career readiness falls under in terms of the cabinet, but they presented for $8,000, and that's our out-of-pocket expense. You get a full-time person in your building. Yes, December 4th they started, but they have more slots. And I'm just thinking, maybe all of our counselors are touching every student 9 through 12 every year. But if they're not, they've got people available. It costs us $8,000 a year for a full-time person. And they said, we've got slots available. Once they're taken up, we can't offer anymore. But it's kind of like they were at the school board conference saying, please use us. And there were like 4 people in the room.
Okay.
So.
And we've had a history of having the college coaches, right? But usually only one. Okay. So maybe this is an opportunity for maybe some of that SIF money can get some additional hands at play.
Yes.
Okay. Any additional items for new business, Mrs. Huff?
Well, the sessions that we took were very, very good sessions.
Good. Glad to hear it.
And a lot of good information in there. But one I sent to, or I just gave to Mr. Garrison, Shelby County has totally redesigned their education with mental first, emotional second, and then academics. They had an eye-opening experience with 13 expulsions in 1 year and said, hey, we got to change some things. And so they've turned their school district around. They also have a very good virtual program that's tier-based. And so, like, for instance, in January, 24 out of the 300 students they have in their virtual program will be going back into the building because of their tier. I think it's very important that we go down and we talk to them. They take their board members down wherever they want them to know, because they have to have the buy-in from the board members to see it. I felt very passionate about that. It was a really good one. But I also wanted to state that the Kentucky Education and Labor Cabinet Department of Workforce Development is here in Covington. I don't know if we utilize them, but it's important workforce and innovation and opportunity act. And they will help supplement for like our vocational students that are any kind of program that they have. If they need construction work boots, they can buy it for them. things like that. I think, and they're here in Covington, I think we should utilize them. They have to deal with it. 75% of their budget goes to students that are not in our buildings. And then 25% of it goes to students that are in our buildings, and they service students from the age of 14 to 24. So if we could reach out to them.
All right. Ms. Edlin.
Sorry, while we're on the topic of KSBA, there was also a group that, an exhibitor rather, that I learned a little bit more about. It's the GREC Ed. It's the Green River Educational Cooperative, and they offer a service that's very similar to Bloomboard, but actually it's a little bit more expansive in terms of the offerings. So they actually provide an opportunity to gain some credit through a university, which I think could be more, which could be appealing to some of our folks. They have some more alternative routes. So I wasn't sure exactly what our contract, if it was only with them or if this would be an additional option we could offer our educators.
Okay.
Great. Well, one, I'm very glad that you guys had a great time at KSBA. I'll take that back to my colleagues on the KSBA Board of Directors. That Covington gave the Winter Symposium a big thumbs up.
Best one yet.
Best one yet. It's going to be on the flyer next year. You know, like there you go. Any additional items for new business?
I just briefly,
Sure.
I wanted to, I thanked Mr. Garrison for his and Stacy's and Scott's work. You mentioned the event yesterday. I thought it was a tremendous event. And I thought there's been so much progress on that strategic plan. I'm excited about our retreat and talking and helping prioritize some of those points. But just want to thank Mr. Garrison and his team for putting that event together. It was great.
It was a really great event. So thank
All
you.
the team, Mr. Gaffney. All the team. I will, just for clarification,
Sure.
before we get off this, so are we good for the 27th for the retreat? Because I still have to get our lineup together.
Yeah, that was the date we
And
picked.
we'll have to work together on
Yep.
what that looks like. But I'll invite the cabinet and then whoever else we think needs to be there.
Yeah.
I need to know if that's a
Yeah.
done deal. The 27th is the retreat. And
Yes.
then, hope to hear what times
Yeah.
you want it to be and all that.
All right. Any announcements? All good. We've got some upcoming events here. Tomorrow's the last day for students before winter break. And then staff will return on January the 2nd. Students will return on January the 3rd. All right. If there's nothing else, I'll wish everyone a very happy holidays, and we will stand adjourned until 2024. Thank you.
Happy New Year.